Greetings and welcome to The Black Room. This is the podcast for all things erotic mind control, and I am your host, Callidus. Welcome back. Here at the top, I would like to just take a moment to thank everyone who has taken the time to comment on the show or to email about the show or to share the podcast on social media and what have you. I really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to support the podcast and to voice their appreciation. It really, really does mean a lot. So thank you very, very much. We've got a great episode this time, a really great guest. The hypnotic Mistress Love, hypnodomme and artist, is going to be coming up in just a little while. We had a great conversation and you're going to definitely want to check that out. And then I've got a killer YouTube recommendation that I'm going to talk about in just a moment. But first, I do just want to mention two things real quickly. Number one, if you are on Mac, if you are a Macintosh user and you are looking for a piece of software that can do a lot of the things Photoshop can do, but costs a lot less money, there's a application I believe I might have mentioned on the show before. It's called Affinity Photo, and it has recently come out of beta and is for sale now in the Mac App Store. It is at an introductory price of $40. I suspect it'll go up to $50 at some point, but I have beta tested it, and I also got the release candidate, which came out just maybe a month or so ago. It's a great application. It's very, very powerful, and if you happen to be on the Apple platform and looking for something, you might want to go give it a look. It's a pretty compelling application and has a lot of professional features for sure. Speaking of hypnodommes and Twitter, this is just something that I got a giggle out of, but there's a hypnodomme named Goddess Marquisa who actually was the very first hypnodomme I ever heard. The very first hypnotic MP3 that I ever listened to was one of Goddess Marquisa's. It was called Enslaved by Pleasure, and it completely blew my mind and hopelessly addicted me to this fetish, and it's kind of the standard by which all others are measured, and in many ways, her style and certainly some of her turns of phrase and so forth have been a big influence on the various hypnodomme characters that I have written in my own work over the years. And I just kind of got a giggle this week to discover that she had followed me on Twitter. That was it was a moment for a young man. So anyway, that was just interesting and fun for me, and hopefully for you as well. Something that I feel much more confident that is going to be really fun for you is this YouTube channel that I stumbled onto. And as you probably are aware, there is a ton of hypnosis fetish content on YouTube. Of course, the thing about this fetish that's kind of interesting is that as as all of our content tends to be fiction, photo manips, fetish video, and so forth, most of the influences that we have come from pretty vanilla sources. And so it's not difficult at all to go on YouTube and find a lot of those. Usually the impediment is copyright issues as opposed to any sort of adult content. Anyway, I found this YouTube channel called EvilHairDresser IsOnFire, which automatically gets a lot of bonus points for having such a ridiculously awesome handle. And EvilHairDresser IsOnFire has a YouTube channel dedicated to brainwashing clips as opposed to hypnosis clips. These are a little bit more selective. These involve women strapped to chairs. These involve evil devices with lights and sound effects and things of that nature, and is specifically about brainwashing as opposed to just hypnosis. And this individual has a terrific mix of clips from film and television. Some are pretty common. Some are a little bit more rare. There's definitely some in there that I guarantee all of you listening have seen before. Things like Uma Thurman in The Avengers, the Bionic Woman shampoo brainwash scene, one of the most famous. There's a scene that I've seen a number of places. It's a brainwashing scene from the 1943 Batman serial, which is a riot to watch because of the fact that it has honestly some of the most diabolical looking and sounding props, because this of course is the era of Frankenstein's monster and all of those great Universal horror films. And so a mad scientist laboratory was something that prop departments in the 1940s really knew how to put together. And that wealth of knowledge is evident in this sequence. But that one's pretty cool. It's also got the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. clips of Agent 33 being brainwashed, which I, of course, am such a huge, huge fan of. That's, as I've said, I think, in other places, that's probably my favorite piece of mind control that occurs in a vanilla production to date. That probably sums up almost everything that I really love about brainwashing and mind control, all in that one episode. And the nice thing is that most of these clips, where it's appropriate, like in the case of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., all 4 segments that take place throughout that episode that relate to Agent 33 being brainwashed. So if you don't particularly feel like going and watching the whole episode, if you're not especially interested in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., or if you just don't want to spoil what other story things might be going on in that episode, you can go and watch that clip and really get all of the relevant things and really get the effect of it without spoiling anything else or taking as much time. So I really appreciate the fact, and I don't know if that is this individual, Evil Hairdresser, has actually edited these clips and done that, or if they've just managed to curate these clips from sources that had all of that put together already. Another one of the, I think probably one of the more famous clips of brainwashing, and this is one that I can remember from my youth, definitely one that had my attention, although I didn't quite know why when I was a young guy, and that is the Attack Angels episode of Charlie's Angels, which features Tanya Roberts in a number of brainwashing and hypnosis segments that take place over the course of the episode. And there's some really, really great stuff going on there. There are multiple induction techniques that are used, taking her initially into trance, deepening her trance, conditioning her deeper. It's really, really great stuff. They use a candle flame at one point. There's a lot of flashing light induction, sound effects. Eric Braeden, who is probably most well known for being on The Young and the Restless, is the baddie in that episode, and he's the brainwasher. He does a really, really fantastic job. His voice and everything is very emblematic of, I think, what that particular scenario is all about. Tanya Roberts is actually really, really great in the episode. Sort of her interpretation of trance and being under control, simultaneously being sort of devoid of volition, but also there's a slight edge of desperation or something to her performance, which I hadn't realized until I was watching that clip in preparation for this episode, that has really informed my sort of thoughts on what being under hypnotic control looks and sounds like. But I guess that's not too surprising, given the fact that, as I said, this was something that I saw when I was young and really, really did stay with me over the years. There's another great scene in that, and I think this is one of those things that I think is really a necessity in any sort of good mind control, is you need to sort of see the consequences of that person being controlled. And in this episode, there's a moment where she phones home. She calls the office, and the other angels and Bosley are there, and she's talking to them, completely normal, really upbeat, just letting them know, hey, my day's going pretty good, and yada, yada, yada. And they hang up with her, and somebody even comments, well, it looks like she's having fun on the job. And then she hangs up the phone, and it just all goes away, and she drains back into this blank slave persona. It is scorching hot. I am not even kidding you. Anyway, that one is really good. There's some great ominous dialogue. Take her for sensory conditioning and so forth. It's a great clip. Definitely one of my favorites. Another great one that's in there is Warrior of the Lost World, which is a pretty cheesy sci-fi adventure movie, but it's got some relatively good actors in it. It's got Donald Pleasance, and then, and I hope I'm not butchering her name too terribly, but Pierces Kambata, the Indian model and actress who was Ilea in Star Trek The Motion Picture. And I've never seen the entire film, but I know that there are at least, I guess, 3 or kind of 4 segments of the film that deal directly with Donald Pleasance brainwashing Kambata's character. And again, as I was saying, this clip has all those segments. And it's really, really good. Pleasance is very, very good. He's very understated. I think that almost all bad acting could be made at least 50% better if the actors in question would simply just turn down the volume a little bit. And that's one of those things, I guess, that just comes with experience and a little bit of age and wisdom, I suppose. But it's really interesting to watch an actor who is as talented as Donald Pleasance in a film that, let's face it, is a bit on the cheesy side. As a matter of fact, I would wager that most of the mind control and brainwashing clips that really stand out in our minds as being the kind of the definitive stuff, more often than not tend to come from kind of kitschy, cheesy movies and or television shows. I cannot at the moment think of a mind control scene from a film that I would consider to be really, really great, although there probably is one I'm not thinking of. But I would invite anybody to weigh in on that if they can think of a few. But anyway, getting back to this film, Warrior of the Lost World, Pleasance is really good, and I kind of think in some ways it's the epitome of the beautiful woman brainwashed by the evil scientist trope. It works out really good, even though Pleasance is saying some pretty nonsensical dialogue. He really kind of sells the determination of his character to make this happen. And there's the way that he is almost sympathizing with Kambata's character as he is breaking into her mind is really creepy. And again, is one of those tropes that I think we feel the reverberations of in mind control fiction and things that we are all creating and consuming even today. One of the most rare clips, and there is some rare stuff in there. There's some anime stuff, some that you've probably seen, some that you haven't. They've got the Virtua Fighter clip, which I've only seen a couple of places. They've got a clip that I think is from Granger, an old Japanese, one of their kind of sci-fi adventure television series from the 60s, I want to say. That clip is in there. There's definitely some stuff in there that's a little off the beaten path, but one I have never seen before and never even heard of before is from an Italian adventure film called Super Argo and the Faceless Giants, which goes back to 1968. And it is incredible. It is absolutely incredible. The premise of the film is that an ex-wrestler who accidentally kills a man in the ring swears off wrestling, but is convinced to take up the mantle of a superhero and fight crime. Because, of course, someone who cannot be trusted with human life in sports automatically fails upward into law enforcement, which totally makes sense. In any case, Super Argo runs around in basically a red Lycra bodysuit with black underwear on the outside, and of course he's got a black mask on, black gloves, very superhero-ish, and he fights baddies. And in this case, the baddies have a small army of these faceless robotic henchmen. Kind of think like Doctor Who with like the almost like mannequin faces, but they also have these very large sci-fi looking helmets. And I really didn't know what to expect when I sat down and watched this clip. I see the guy running around in the tights. I'm like, okay, so this is some sort of superhero thing. And then these faceless guys start busting into this house and they start this fight in the living room. And I'm like, what is going on? And give me more of it. This is fantastic. So anyway, while they are fighting Super Argo, two of them search the house and they find the very attractive Italian female companion who is with Super Argo, and they kidnap her. And they then brainwash her to believe Super Argo is trying to kill her brother. And that's another kind of interesting thing, the trope of brainwashing being used to drive a wedge between two parties. That's something that I've seen quite a bit of. And I think that probably actually dates to some early use of mind control. Like I'm trying to think of, I think one of the Road movies with Bob Hope and Bing Crosby. I remember one of them featured a older hypnotic woman with a jewel that she would use to put people under her spell, and it seems to me that she often used that to try and inculcate herself with people and to drive them away from friends and family, the people they would normally trust. Anyway, I'm getting off track. Back to Super Argo, and you're welcome. Super Argo. So Super Argo's companion is brainwashed to think that Super Argo's got it in for her brother. And my only disappointment with this really is that we sort of come in at the end of the brainwashing process where they have taken control of her and they are now actively programming her with this new mindset. And it's kind of a slight letdown. Number one, given how bad everything else has been, it just makes me wish that we could have seen this film's take on something like hypnotic lights or sound effects and things like that. But the acting from the actress and the sort of evil scientist controller is actually pretty decent, given the fact that it's an English dub of an Italian adventure movie. It's really not too bad. But anyway, this is definitely worth a watch. If you've seen the Italian Spider-Man thing floating around on YouTube, which is a modern day parody that is made in the vein of this kind of movie, but that is exactly what it calls to mind. Like, you really, really see how Italian Spider-Man kind of came to be, given the fact that Italian cinema produced these sorts of action adventure films back in the day. I tell you another one that's pretty cheesy, although it's a lot more modern, is Electra, which is a direct-to-cable sci-fi adventure film starring Shannon Tweed, famously the Playboy playmate. She's also, I guess they are actually married now, but she's been the longtime partner of Gene Simmons of Kiss. And Electra is interesting. This came out in 1996, and I'm definitely dating myself at this point, but I had the distinct pleasure of informing you about this film, given the fact that I saw it the night it debuted on cable. I was there and ready for it because I was kind of a fan of Shannon Tweed. I thought, I still think she's pretty attractive, and I was all about seeing Shannon Tweed in this sort of dark, super villainous role, which they were selling her as. In any case, I'm not going to tell you that you need to go watch this film, but it is pretty interesting. The basic plot of the film is Shannon Tweed's son, who of course is named Billy, is in possession of a super soldier serum. And there is an evil scientist confined to a wheelchair who wants this serum because he knows that it will restore the use of his legs. And he's tried various things and nothing's really panned out, but this is going to be the key. And he will stop at nothing to get a hold of this superhero serum or super soldier serum. He's got two hench ladies working for him, these two model/actresses dressed in dominatrix gear, who go around the whole movie menacing guys with guns who don't think they've got anything to fear from women in thigh-high leather boots. But they are wrong, and they find out quickly how wrong they are. They have some enhanced abilities. I can't remember now exactly how that plot goes, but I don't know if they're operating at the same level as Billy, but they do have some kind of enhanced capabilities. But anyway, the mind control business to this film is somewhere a little past the halfway point, let's say Act 3. They kidnap Shannon Tweed, who again is the mother of this kid Billy, who they're trying to get. They kidnap Shannon Tweed, and they have her strapped down to this table, and she is watching some kind of display that's mounted on the ceiling above her, and we come to find out they are probing her mind. It's actually one of the best lines of dialogue in the entire thing. She asks the wheelchair-bound evil scientist at one point what they're doing, and he responds, "Stimulating your erogenous zones while probing your subconscious." And that is a pretty good indication of where the writing is in this film. As a matter of fact, I will say that as opposed to the Donald Pleasance character that we were just talking about in the evil scientist brainwashes beautiful women situation, the guy in this movie, not exactly Donald Pleasance. not exactly operating at the same level. It seems to me that the motivation behind every line of dialogue is, I have to remind everyone how evil I am. And sometimes it's just a little too much. But anyway, what happens is he mind probes Shannon Tweed's character to reveal her innermost sexual desires, which he's going to use against her. And as we come to find out, her innermost sexual desires is a reverse Oedipus complex. She wants to kill her son Billy's girlfriend and then have sex with Billy herself. And of course, she denies this, but she can't deny the truth. And having this knowledge, being able to tap into this dark hidden fantasy in her mind, they use this to brainwash her in conjunction with a silver vibrator. And it's actually a reasonably hot sequence. I don't recall any nudity that actually goes on there, but he's on one side of the table where she's strapped down. His two fembots are on the other side of the table where she's strapped down. One of them produces the silver vibrator, switches it on, this very ominous buzzing sound, and then it's lowered out of frame. And of course, she responds instantly. And then they begin this process of breaking her mind in conjunction with this pleasure and the fantasies that they've unlocked and so on. And when she orgasms, they have her. And that's all fine. That's all pretty good. And if you only watch that part, which I kind of recommend you only watch that part, then you can walk away from it feeling satisfied. If you keep watching, however, I can't guarantee the results at that point, because later they manage to capture Billy and the two fembots, and I'm just saying, like, they're not actually represented like androids or anything in the movie, but they don't really do a lot of acting either. They're kind of mannequin-like in that sense. But anyway, the two fembots try to seduce Billy because apparently they can extract the super soldier serum through his essence, if you can hear the air quotes here. But apparently Billy has so much control because he is so corn-fed American hero, this guy, that he resists getting hard while they're seducing him and gyrating over his body in a very pleasant way, I would imagine. But he resists. They just don't do it for him. So send in Electra, who is the evil supervillainous alter ego of Shannon Tweed's character, now decked out herself in her own BDSM gear and lots of hairspray. Because as we all know, supervillainesses are defined by hair volume. In any case, she manages to get his motor revved because apparently the Oedipus thing is kind of working with this family. So she climbs on top of it. He's strapped down to the same table she was in earlier. She climbs on top of him and she whispers something about, just play along and then we're going to get out of here. So he relaxes. He later comes to discover her evil plan, forgive the pun, when he warns her that he's about to orgasm, and she keeps riding him anyway, right up to the brink, and then over the edge they go. And he realizes that he's been tricked and she's actually working with the baddies. And she laughs maniacally. There's probably more hairspray, I'm not sure. But in any case, she has managed to succeed where the fembots failed. She has extracted his essence and along with it, the super soldier serum. So she immediately returns to the evil scientist. She now herself is wielding this power that she's taken from Billy. She gives the evil scientist the wheelchair lap dance of his diabolical career. And she does in fact pass on the effects of the super soldier serum to him, allowing him to walk. Because as we all know, the super soldier serum is a sexually transmitted disease. That is what the film teaches us. I am not kidding. I am not joking with you about this. The movie absolutely represents it like this. Yes, I am. I'm going to encourage you to watch this. I'm not telling you you're going to enjoy it, but I'm telling you your life is going to be better for having seen it than not. You don't want to go through your entire life not having watched a movie this terrible, but also having a couple of pretty good mind control related scenes. It's definitely worth your time. Go check out this clip, but maybe then do yourself one better and try to go track down the full movie. And before you ask, yes, I have the full movie on VHS. Aren't we jealous? One of the clips that I had not seen on YouTube before, I had seen it before, but that's because I was a big fan of Terry Hatcher even back then. But there's a brainwashing scene from Lois and Clark. Now, I think most of us are familiar with the Magic Channel episode. That's a season 1 episode called Illusions of Grandeur, starring my friend and yours, Penn Jillette, or guest starring. This is a season 3 episode called Forget Me Not, which has Lois in the shorter hairstyle, which I'm going to be completely honest with you, kind of does it for me. In any case, I think that there's something to do with Lois is posing as someone else, someone who has lost her memory, in order to infiltrate this clinic that's doing some kind of treatment for people with memory loss, but there's some suspicion about what's really going on and their connection to some nefarious things that are happening. So she's kind of undercover. And of course, as can happen when you're undercover in the layer of an evil mind controller, you might wind up getting brainwashed, and that's what happens. She's brainwashed to kill somebody, and she's in this chair. I don't think she's strapped down, although we may never see. But she's in this chair, much like what you would see in an optometrist's office. And as a matter of fact, she is looking through the apparatus an optometrist uses to test different lenses. Number 1, number 2. Can I see number 2 again? Can I see number 1 again? That's how those things always go for me. But she's looking through the lenses of that apparatus at some sort of screen. She's got these electrode patched onto her forehead. She's wearing headphones. It's pretty hot. And Terry Hatcher, I think, has actually got sort of a great trance face. Like, she really knows sort of what to do with that, as evidenced in this episode, but also in the previously mentioned Illusions of Grandeur episode, where she is watching the Magic Channel. That episode also pretty much works for me, even though she's got the longer hair. I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm really not. I'll take however Terry Hatcher wants to do it. I'll take it. I'm just saying that Terry Hatcher in brainwashing chair, wearing the headphones with the shorter hair, kind of working for me, just a little bit. All right. In any case, to wrap up, to sum up, I've given you as much fuel as I possibly can to convince you that you need to go and check out Evil Hairdresser is on Fire on YouTube. The link is in the show notes at my website. You can find it at podcast.callidus-mc.com. I suggest you go over there, subscribe. That stuff always helps. And I would check out, when you go to the channel, you can also look at videos that Evil Hairdresser has liked. And there's some great stuff in there. Some of it's hypnosis related. Some of it is hairdressing related. So if you're looking to get some mind control fetish stuff, as well as some hair fashion tips, this is the YouTube channel for you. And I really would like to just give them a big shout out for putting together this great collection of brainwashing clips. I love brainwashing especially, and there's some great stuff here on this channel. So go check it out. Now, as I look at the clock and realize I have been talking about this for pretty much a half hour now, I've got a couple of other things I was going to get to, but I think that I will save those for next time, because right now it is time to introduce you to my guest this episode. She is a very talented artist, a very seductive hypnodomme, and just an exceptionally fun person to talk to. Please join me in welcoming to the Black Room the mesmerizing Mistress Love. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you, Cal. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you very much.
So,
now,
sorry.
Well, no, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Jump right in.
I was just going to say, before we get started, I wanted to thank you very much for having me on your podcast today.
Oh, you're welcome. You're very welcome.
And I have been a long time admirer of your work, and I often pop on your site. to see what is new. And I do on many sites, from Simon's MC Stories as well, to the collective. And of course, Maurice on Erapture. And I'm sort of one of those silent watchers in the dark shadows when it comes to the MC community.
Yes, that's where I like to be too. Now, I have to repay you the compliment because I've been a fan of yours for quite a while too. And you and I think we only spoke just a number of times, but certainly I was watching your work on the HypnoPix Collective. It's been several years ago now,
Yes. Yeah.
but you were posting at the time as Bunny Love. I think that's because you were working with a collaborator.
That's right. I was one of my good friends.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the work that you did in concert was really fantastic.
Thank you.
And certainly, it's interesting to see how you have. It's certainly interesting to see how you have utilized that part of your creative output to complement the hypnotic MP3s that you're now releasing as Mistress Love.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm enjoying it. I absolutely love to write and create and see what is next in my mind.
Right. Well, let's talk about that just a little bit. Actually, let's go back just a little bit.
Sure.
When and how did you first discover the online erotic mind control community?
Years ago, really. Years ago, I started off. I was on a site called Beauty's Castle. I don't know if anybody remembers that. That was years and years and years ago, and sort of started into that sort of thing. And of course, when the internet really started to come out, I mean, you could find anything, right? So that's kind of how I found different things in the collective, and that's basically how I found everything. And I was interested in it. I was like, wow, like even a long time ago, like my earliest recollections of hypnosis and of course mind control were television shows I watched as a young girl. Lots of older shows rerun, in the 80s and 70s and even back in the 60s. Modern technology, right?
I do indeed remember. Well, what were some of the things that caught your eye at that age?
Well, like the retro show channels, just like Scooby-Doo and, different children's things that were just kind of trippy.
There was a lot of that. There was a lot of that in the late 70s and early 80s.
Yeah, and even, like I said, like Scooby-Doo especially, right?
Yeah.
It was just...
Definitely.
It just kind of all started through there as well. And comic books, television. My brothers were always into comics from garage sales. Of course, he never liked the girly comics, so I ended up with Archie and Richie Rich and those kind of comics. And they loved the superhero ones, of course, Spider-Man, X-Men. So
Naturally.
So I ended up with Wonder Woman and a pile of girl comics. And and there were, there was one Wonder Woman I got that had her in a wartime. And I think Wonder Woman must have had reincarnations of herself over the years, because reading those comics, Diana Prince was either in modern clothes or old World War. And one of the things was just amazing to me. And it's confusing, and since I never got a whole series of comics, I didn't read much of them. But this one comic had her battling the cheetah. And she was this rich woman that dressed in a skin-tight cheetah catsuit with claws.
Naturally.
Yeah, and she was somehow figured out, Wonder Woman was Diana Prince, and I had a great plan to hypnotize her and get rid of Wonder Woman. And she used a pocket watch, of course. And what evil supervillain doesn't use a pocket watch? And she
naturally,
she had. And she had Diana look into the mirror and see a reflection as herself, and that made her see Wonder Woman. And when she smashed the mirror, she told her Wonder Woman she was no more. It's a little silly, but at the time it stirred something in me.
The imagery is pretty powerful, though.
For sure.
That notion of showing a person themselves and then breaking them.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
kind of interesting.
Yeah, and even the like Scooby-Doo, for example, the ghost clown
The
one.
Ghost Clown episode.
Yeah. So, it was one of my trances that I did not that long ago called Love is Harlequin, where I play the daughter of the ghost clown and I use my spinning coin of gold to make you do as
As you
you're
were
told.
told.
Yeah.
Let's.
So,
Nicely done.
yeah. So
I like what you're doing.
Yeah. So there's so many hypnosis things, programs, from the 70s and 80s, like,
Yes.
Charlie's Angels and, of course, Wonder Woman. And you remember the episode of Wonder Woman where they do the hair salon and use a shampoo to brainwash her.
Absolutely.
Or
That's the
fembots.
Bionic Woman. That's the
Right.
Bionic Woman, isn't
yeah,
it?
with the fembots.
Yes. That's a great one.
Yeah, so many classic shows. Austin Powers, he had something like that as well with the fembots. Sailor Moon, some of the great mind control in there too. And as far as books go, I think C.S. Lewis had a great scene in The Ice Queen in it. There was Splinter in Time. So many books. And I almost forgot the Doctor. Of course, my brothers love Doctor Who.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and lots of mind control in those plots as well. And
Oh, yeah.
Dracula. It was just, I was sad to hear one of my favorite Hammer film stars, actually, Christopher Lee. He passed on not that long ago.
Yeah, I was a big fan of Christopher Lee.
Yeah, me too. And he was a great Dracula, and his stare, those hypnotic eyes. So yes. Even like Homer's, duh, he kind of seems like he's in a trance as well, right? So.
Yes, of an entirely different nature.
For sure.
All right, well, now this leads to an interesting question. Let's play a little nature versus nurture. Do you think that your interest in mind control is something innate that was always inside you, or do you think it was as a result of seeing all these examples of mind control when you were younger?
I think a little bit of both, really.
Right.
How we all turn out. No one really knows what certainty what one plays the bigger factor and what we enjoy. The true answer is to which side tips the scales. Maybe it's in my DNA that I was meant to be a dominant and controlling person. I know that my dad was, and I take after him in many ways. And it's funny, since he was such a huge man, he was tall, he was like 6'5",
Right.
and I'm not that tall. I'm about 5'7", and but size doesn't really matter. And it's the confidence as a dominant. But I think it's the environment of our generation that exposes us to what we see as a fetish in some ways, and the idea of mind control being a fetish is something new to our culture, but as old as the writings of Greek or Roman myth and even the Bible, we are influenced by what is around us as much as what we are inside, So
I agree. I think that I read a lot about just what's going on in science right now with neurobiology and things like that. And it seems that the more that we discover about how the human mind works, it seems that we do have a physiological predisposition to certain things, but the environment around us plays almost an equal part.
Big time.
And so I think what you said earlier is that there's a balance in which of those things ends up sort of tipping one way or another towards a certain behavior or interest.
For sure. The brain is a beautiful thing, really.
I agree. I find it fascinating, particularly the brain as it relates to human sexuality and how that is such a profound motivator in so many different aspects of our lives and our behavior. Which leads to another question. Was there a turning point moment when you realized that your interest in mind control had become sexual?
Well, in university, I studied real clinical hypnosis, and it was part of the program I did for extra credits, and it was really dry, like totally dry. But sexually, the prospect of using hypnosis in a DS relationship didn't come about until later, when I started playing about with chat sites. Like earlier I said about Beauty's Castle.
Yeah.
And it was like a chat site that had all these master and servant things going on. It's kind of cool, actually. I honestly don't remember how I ended up there. I just found it on the internet, and
Yes.
I think it popped up from a link somewhere or whatever. And I often went in while in university, and I chatted about the different people and such. And at that time, my name was Cyan Rose. And I even went as a master a few times, taking on the role as a man,
Ah,
just to have some fun. Funny how the male is almost always perceived as a dominant role, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
mostly it was pokes and watching how things happen there. BDSM is really not my thing at all, but the DS it was, and I went in exploring my submissive side, and I thought, oh, maybe I'd like to try a submissive role, and since the dominant role seemed to hard to wrap my mind around, but I found out very quickly that I was not a submissive. And I would end up topping from the
From the
bottom.
bottom.
Yeah,
Hmm.
or turn the tables on the pathetic loser guy that thought that he knew that he was like, the submissive and me wanted. And I was like, no, no. And it
That's
became,
that's that's actually kind of super hot in a
yeah,
way.
it is. It became a total turn on to
Yeah.
dominate them, and I found myself getting excited about it. And but then it isn't really the answer to your question. But since it was the domination that turned me on, not the mind control, but that scene did show me something called subspace, and which is mind control, a deep form that many in the BDSM community don't see as being hypnosis. And they think of it as a mind state where the sub is sent into that pacifies them. In fact, it is a deep form of mind control that works very well. Now,
Right.
I learned that it was a high to make a man feel this subspace deeply, and that leads me to my second life. Second life, for those who don't know, is a community in a virtual world. You can see it online, secondlife.com, and it's not like anything else that you could find anywhere else. I joined it when it first started, and I actually heard about Second Life because of my favorite group is Duran Duran. I'm a big Duran Duran fan,
Yep.
and they were doing an island in this community called Second Life. So I joined it, I explored it, and then going exploring SL, I found out that you had to have money called lindens to buy things, and to update your clothes and your face and all that kind of stuff. And people earned money doing virtual jobs. Well, it quickly became a virtual life, but while I explored, I found BDSM references, and many people practice forms of virtual, dominant, and submissive actions. And I had this little experience, very little experience with DS, and that's we can get into that question later. But anyway, I tried being a submissive in the virtual world, and then I quickly found out that most men are bad at dominating a woman properly. I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Right.
They tend to be like total assholes. And honestly, I felt like, like a submissive under most of the people there, but as a vanilla milkshake, they just didn't do it right. So I did what every woman does. I studied up on what a dominant should be. I learned what makes a dominant, and I tried some things out. And that is one of the great things about SL. You can do or be totally anything in this virtual world. And I remember back to what I learned about. And of course, I studied hypnosis in university, and for some of my credits, the two looked a lot alike. Anyway, as I mentioned before, you need lindens. That's their currency to buy things in SL.
Right.
And I happened to I needed I needed to get a sexy girl call, and I went in. I turned some tricks, and I did some virtual tricks, and but still it involved a great deal of role playing and typing. And if you ever get a letter from me or read my stories, that's the whole reason why you see me text the way with three dots and such, because it's a role playing thing that I do.
Yeah.
And the thing is, other people didn't have the background I did for texting, and of course, me being a little younger, I had a way of texting that, and it made you become a part of what I was doing. I combined that with the knowledge of BDSM and DS from varying reading and some activity in my earlier life. And you had a top that is virtually hypnotizing hypnotizing you, and it turns tricks. I wasn't long until I was managing the virtual brothel in SL, and I was training others how to do texting better, and I was showing them how to basically hypnotize with text.
Hmm.
And that was when there was a new interest in SL about hypnosis and something called erotic hypnosis and machines that hypnotized. People would go into this like machine and get hypnotized. There were groups dedicated to hypnosis, and there's things snowballed into community of people that seem to love hypnotic submission. I loved SL, and I knew one thing about it. It's very addictive. I had a call it quits after a while because it just takes over your life, totally takes over your life. I had a huge garden with a waterfall, and I had slaves that were tended it and made things for me, and I was living a virtual life of a dominant there. And I would come on, and there would always be at least 12 to like 20 instant messages for me that
Right,
always a
immediately.
minimum, yeah, like ding 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 ding. It just drives you crazy. And I made called a new you salon, and that did bimbification transformations and makeovers, and I
Yeah.
did lots of things there with people. And that was one of the reasons I have such a wide range of sessions to voice for, because I've kept all those text trances I did in SL. And I highly recommend SL for fun and trances, by the way. I still go on there once in a while just to do one. And there's different locations in there. There's one called Hypnodolls. There's the
Hmm.
Pink Institute. It's great fun exploring the places in SL. And, just to be warned, you have to have a good video card to run the virtual world.
Right.
And not every Avi is what they seem. So, yeah.
I I've visited SL a couple of times. I got interested in it. I'm a gamer,
Yeah.
and so when I discovered that there was this, and just to be clear for those who are listening and really don't know, Second Life looks like a video game, but really isn't, in the sense that it doesn't have the kind of, it doesn't have like objectives or a score or any of those kinds of things.
No.
It,
Not
the,
unless you
the,
play games. You can play games on there.
that's true.
Different
There
games.
are certain simulations that do
Yeah.
have that, but really, the Second Life is almost like the internet made into a virtual place where there are different locations that, in a way, almost might be analogous to websites, and they'll be themed differently, and different people will hang out there. You can chat with each other. You can go and see things. You can go and do things.
Yeah. Go dancing, go
Yeah,
hypnotizing. You can do whatever the hell you want. It's a lot of fun, actually.
you really can.
Yeah.
But I dabbled in Second Life a little bit when I discovered that there was an erotic hypnosis community there, and I one of the just one brief anecdote here that I got a really big kick out of. Somebody sent me a screenshot from inside Second Life, and I think it's I can't remember the location that this is in, but somewhere in Second Life, there in one of the hypnosis themed areas, there's a like a board that has a bunch of square kind of posters that I guess you can click on that will link to different things. Some are websites and some are other locations inside of Second Life, and the link for the erotic mind control story archive, which for my money is the hub, the center hub of the online erotic hypnosis community.
Right.
But the link for it is one of my manips of a woman on the ground, face pressed up against a computer monitor. Of course, I had a spiral in there for her to look at, but somebody had altered that image and instead put the erotic mind control story archive webpage in the computer monitor in this manip that I had done years ago, and I got a big kick out of that. I thought, oh, that's kind of flattering, I guess.
It is. Somebody using your stuff.
I haven't visited Second Life lately to go and look at this for myself, but I'll have to do that at some point.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
So, what about your background in art? I mean, obviously you know your way around Photoshop and you understand animation and things like that. How did you get interested in those things?
Well, I've always been a creative person, and I have a bit of an artistic background. Most imaginative people do. But Bunny was the one that taught me most of the stuff with Photoshop. I looked stuff up and worked with the programs lots during that time period. And it's amazing what you can learn online and virtual books and YouTube lessons.
It's amazing. I mean, it's like that. That's what I spend most of my time doing, is just teaching myself new things.
Yeah. It's a lot of fun just to play around. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah. So when did you first start posting to the HypnoPix Collective? Was it when they were still a Yahoo group, or was it after Mesmerize and Lee and everybody split it off into its own website?
Well, I guess, okay. Now picture this. This is kind of a funny story. Flashback many years ago, I discovered the collective on my own. And as I said at the start, I'm a lurker. I stay in the shadows lots, and I like images there, but at times they seemed really, really, not the best quality. So I guess it's when it was a website, when they first started as a website. It is a male dominant fetish, few women, and I know,
which is unfortunate.
Which it is, yes. And I do use the term woman, as in a real woman, not those that say that they are.
Yes.
They're, like 40 years old fat men behind a computer. I know. Real women like myself.
Named Chuck.
Yeah, or Harry or whatever.
Yeah.
We don't often have the same taste as men. And anyway, I had a best friend that was also in the graphics program at a local college. And she and I would do lots of drinking and such. And I was young, and so was she. And we often ended up at her place or mine after with a bottle of peach liqueur and some OJ, and otherwise known as fuzzy navels.
The recipe for a good time.
Yeah, exactly. And one night when we were hammered, I showed her the collective, and she was like, we could do much, much better than that. And so we made some of those together, and we posted as Bunny Love. And since she took the name Bunny and me Love, that's how we ended up with Bunny Love. It was a lot of fun to do. And I found after that the collective seemed to have, and I followed it on the collective, and she didn't do it as much, but I followed it more than she did. And but when we got back to her place, we often sat with her on Photoshop and made shit up. And back then it was loosey goosey, and I can't find decent alias, and it was a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun.
One of the greatest moments of my life was when I got my own, because you remember the way the collective used to work, like the old galleries, there would be certain sort of top tier artists that would appear in the directory, and then everybody else would be in the user galleries folder.
That's right. Yes.
And
yes.
one of the proudest moments of my life is when I got moved out of the user galleries folder, and I was given my own top level folder, and I was right underneath can't find a decent alias. I was like, I am officially in good company now, because he's done some great stuff.
For sure. That's a lot of fun.
It is. Speaking of some of these artists and things that we're talking about, who influenced your work? Was there anybody that you looked at that was doing the kinds of things that you thought were of quality and that you were trying to emulate, or did it really just come from the two of you?
Well, pretty much the two of us. I think so much of the things that Bunny and I that we were looking at that influenced us, and of course the fuzzy navels did too. Anywho, I think that I tend to just look at what is current and what perks my sexual curiosity, and of course a lot of my work is influenced by my readers and my fan letters that I get, messages and texts and such. So I guess I'm my own influence, really, because it just pops into my head and I'm like, hey, I could do something better than that, That's
the way you do it.
Yeah.
And that, dear listener, is where I believe we will leave things this episode, but be sure and tune in next time to hear the second half of this excellent conversation between myself and Mistress Love. And I want to thank Mistress Love for coming on the show and just being so gracious and so much fun to talk to. It was a really, really enjoyable conversation. And of course, if you'd like to find more of Mistress Love, you can do so on Twitter at the Mistress Love. And you can, of course, also locate her on sensualmistress.com, enraptured.net, and Tumblr as well. All those links will be in the show notes, which you can find at podcast.callidus-mc.com. And I am also on Twitter. If you were so inclined to follow me, you can do so at Callidus. You can also locate me on Tumblr. I'm Callidus-MC, and I also run a Tumblr with just my manips and my podcast, which is Callidus Creates. I'd like to thank everyone for listening to the Black Room podcast, and also invite you to share your questions, comments, and suggestions about the show. I always enjoy reading your feedback, and please tune in next time, where I will have the second half of the conversation with Mistress Love and so much more. Until then, farewell.